Hello everyone, it's Matt here again. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I know it's several days after Christmas now, but we still got a couple of days to go till New Year's, so Happy New Year. And I'm just going to show a few fairly recent pickups, a few recent buys, mostly vinyl, but there's a few cassettes here as well. So yeah, let's dive right in. Let's start with the tapes. Now, I've had a little, this is turning into a bit of a saga, okay? These Simon and Garfunkel tapes, which I got fairly recently, were intended to replace other ones that I got, which I made a previous video about, which turned out not to be very good. Like the pads weren't great, and a couple of them were really dirty and not in very good condition. And I'm just not doing very well with these. So I got these ones recently. So we've got Bookends, which is one of my all-time favorite albums, Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. and Bridge Over Troubled Water. And these are all in the original cases, which is kind of nice because they've got the labels there, which would have been, you know, so you could easily see them in the store. You could look at the top of them. And all of them are good except for Bookends, which is still, it's missing the foam pad. Now I can replace the pad, and I've done that before with tapes, but I'm always wary about doing it because you need to glue it, of course, which means you've got to get the tape out of the way. And it only takes a little slip. You get glue on the tape, and the tape's ruined. You know, and you don't want any glue to kind of shed and end up in any part of your cassette deck mechanism. So I'm always a little bit kind of on the fence about doing that. But funnily enough, I did put this in, and it's getting dropouts between left and right intermittently, just because there's no pad here. But it actually sounded really good, funnily enough. So I may try to salvage this one, but the other two are fine. Bridge Over Troubled Water sounds good. Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. Sounds good as well. So glad to have these. I one of my all-time favorite artists, Simon Garfunkel. I'm just not having a lot of luck as far as the condition of the cassettes. I think the problem is as well that a lot of, you know, I get these from eBay. A lot of eBay sellers, unless they actually show you a photo of this, you know, they'll just say, oh, yep, tape's in good condition, tapes work well, whatever. They never describe the condition of the pad, you know, if it's even there. So anyway, let's move on to the vinyl. We have quite a few recent pickups here. Let's start with a couple of 12-inch singles, which may feature in another video, which I've started to put together, and I have to decide if I'm gonna redo it, but that's for another time. This is Erasure. Sometimes this was their first big hit in the UK, got to number 2 right at the end of 1986, I think it was. Could have been early 87, I'm pretty sure it was the end of 86. And yes, that's a 12-inch mix on. It doesn't have a 7-inch version on it, just has a 12-inch mix. But yeah, it's one of my favorite Erasure songs. A great track. And at the same time, I can get it, there we go. At the same time, at the same record store, I also picked up, there you go, there's a classic, Ray Castley, Never Gonna Give You Up. This one actually does have the 7-inch version on it, as well as the Cake mix. There's an instrumental version, which I'm pretty sure was the B-side of the single, actually. There's the Escape to New York mix and the Escape from Newton mix. So $6. I didn't think that was too bad, to be honest. You know, this day and age, you went back, you know, you go back 5 or 10 years, that would have been an outrageous price, but today, yeah, it's not so bad. All right. So those were 2 record store purchases from a few weeks ago. Next up, we have Michael Jackson's Thriller. But no, it's not just any old Thriller. So I do already have this. I have a US first pressing, but this is the CBS Master Sound half-speed mastered version, and it sounds really good, I have to say. I have quite a few of these CBS Master Sound pressings, and a couple of them are a bit hit or miss, but most of them sound really good. And you know, there's an old story about how they didn't get the EQ right for a few of the earlier releases in this series, in this CBS Master Sound series. and I think it was to do with they didn't adjust it for half speed mastering or something. So there's a few of these entries in this series that are known to be a little bit suspect. I think like the treble's not quite right, something like that. But I thought this sounded great though. I really did, especially with like Beat It and Billie Jean. Those sounded incredible actually. The bass was super tight and punchy on it. So I would recommend this, especially if you can get it for a good price. It seems to go for a little bit more now, but I think if you can get this for, let's say, within the $50 range, then I think that's a reasonable price if it's in very good condition. So yeah, definitely recommend it. It's a really good sounding pressing. All right, next up. Now this one had a little bit of a saga behind it. I'll show you the record first. I haven't actually listened to this yet. Beyonce Lemonade. I know it's supposed to be a very well regarded album. I actually intended to get, and in fact did get, David Gilmour's new album, whose name suddenly escapes me. But anyway, I intended to get his new album from Target. And I went in and they had several copies of it. But most of them, and you get this sometimes in stores like Walmart or Target, a lot of them had like a lot of damage to the shrink, big rips in it and that, but one of them didn't. One of them looked good. So I grabbed it. And because I'd listened to a couple of the songs just, streaming or on YouTube or whatever, and I really liked the sound of them. So I grabbed it, took it home, even made a video that featured it. This is replacing that video, but I realized that it had a big chip taken out of it, just on the edge. It wasn't enough to affect play. Well, unless you put the needle right down, you put the stylus right down at that point, I guess it would have done. But it was just right on the edge, and there was a chip. And I thought, I'm going to return it. I shouldn't have to have a record with a chip in it, regardless of whether I can just simply make sure the stylus doesn't touch it. It's right at the start. It didn't go into the first track or anything. It was just on the edge of it. But still, I thought, I shouldn't have to do that. So I returned it, and they told me, well, because it's a record, we can't give you a refund. You have to replace it with the same album. So I'm already thinking, okay, I already know this is going to be a problem, but I said, sure. So I said, I'll be back. I go over to the records and just hoping desperately that they've restocked them, but of course they hadn't. It was only a few days later. And although they have, several other copies of this Dave Gilmour album, all of them are the ones with the huge rips taken out of them, and I get, so for some people wouldn't care, and I understand that. Some people would be like, well, whatever, I'm just going to rip the shrink off anyway. But I like to try and keep the shrink on if possible. It's just a thing. I mean, obviously, I unseal it to get the records out, but and that's been something I've done for a while. In fact, now that I look at this Beyonce Lemonade, this actually has a few little marks on it, which I didn't notice before, but not really marks, just little splits in the shrink. Kind of see it. Is it going to show up? Let's see. Yeah, a little bit. You see these little lines here? Yeah, that's okay. They weren't bad enough for me to notice at the time. So. Anyways, so I grabbed this. I thought, well, I have to get something else instead. So I thought, oh, you know what? I've never even listened to this album. I know it was very well reviewed. A lot of people called it the album of the year, that type of thing. So I went and got it, and I, took it back, spoke to the lady at the returns and exchanges section, and I said to her, look, all the ones you've got there have a whole bunch of tears and things on them. So I'm not going to replace it with, I'm not going to replace my copy of the Dave Gilmour album with one that, in some people's eyes, is in even worse condition. Can I get this instead? And they said yes. So we got this. I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe I should probably do like a reaction video where I listen to it or something, because I don't know any of the songs off of this, and I might do that. I did film a reaction video which I haven't published because I wasn't too happy with it, to a Post Malone song. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, let's move on. Next up, this was, I think this is a record store purchase as well. Third Eye Blind and Blue. I think I got this at the same time I got those, the Erasure and the Rick Astley 12-inch singles. So yeah, Third Eye Blind, Blue. I'm not very familiar with this album. I do have a friend who has it, and he did play it once, and I liked it. And I spotted this in there, and I just thought, you know what? I'll just grab it. Why not? I buy the other two records anyway. And is it on colored vinyl? Yes, it is. I really like the look of the vinyl. I don't really, and I mentioned this before, I could kind of take or leave the colored vinyl thing, but I have to admit that does look pretty nice. So yeah, so happy to have that. Next up we have this is quite a recent pickup. Public Service Broadcasting and The Last Flight. Now I have all of their albums, and I think they've had several EPs. I have a couple of them, and there's one or two I don't have. But actually, no, the only album of theirs I don't have is a remix album. But in any event, if you don't know anything about Public Service Broadcasting, they do like, I don't even know what genre to put them in. They take music, they create original music, and they put samples to it. And I don't mean like, drum loops or something. I mean clips from what were public service announcements back in the day. But it's not just that. There's other clips too. So, for example, they one of their albums is all about the race for space, and about the 1960s primarily, and the space race between the US and the Soviet Union. And it's there's a lot of clips in that from mission control, things like that, things you would have heard on the TV, and it's really neat. Anyway, this one, which I confess I haven't listened to yet because I only got it very recently, but this one is about Amelia Earhart. That's why it's called The Last Flight. And to give you an example of the track listings, like the names of them, we got I was always dreaming, Towards the Dawn, The Fun of It, The South Atlantic, Electra. I think Electra is that the name of a plane? Is that the type of plane? Something like that. Arabian Flight, Monsoons, A Different Kind of Love, and Howland, which can be referenced to Howland Island. So, where it seems to now be generally acknowledged is likely where her plane went down, whether it crashed or whether it was kind of a forced landing, either way. But anyway, yeah, this is all about her. It's on kind of, I think they called it honey vinyl, which I can show you real quick. Right here, there's a yellowy honey colored vinyl, and yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that. I did listen to one of the tracks online, which I liked because honestly, the previous album, which was called Bright Magic, I wasn't very impressed with. I thought it was by far their worst album. It was worse than all their EPs as well. It wasn't unpleasant. I just found it very boring to listen to. Whereas the little snippets I've heard from this album sounded really cool and interesting. Kind of more back to the stuff they were doing beforehand. All right, now then, let's move on to our last album. And that is Simon & Garfunkel, again, Sounds of Silence. I spotted this on eBay, and I bought it solely because it's got the, what was this, Mad Magazine or whatever it was, tucked into Art Garfunkel's pocket right there. Now, first pressings all had that. Subsequent pressings did not because of, I guess it was like a copyright issue that they were showing this magazine. So, the copy of this album that I have is a later 70s pressing where all you see here is white. So you can tell he's got something in his pocket, but they blanked it out. It's not particularly rare. I mean, it's rarer than the versions where they've whited this out, but but they printed quite a lot of copies of these. But yeah, so it's on the Columbia 2i label right there, and I need to give this a good clean and see how it turns out and compare it to my 70s pressing, because I suppose at the end of the day, if it sounds terrible, then I'm probably not going to keep it. I guess I could switch out the record, but then you've got a mismatch. Any of you guys ever do that? You ever switch out? I've done it a few times, I confess, where I've taken a record that was from one pressing and put it in the sleeve of another, maybe because the record from the one sleeve was in bad condition, or one of the sleeves was way better. I have done that a few times, not many, but a few. I even did it with a different country. I want to say a US record and a Canadian sleeve, or the other way around. It was a record I got from my in-laws. I remember they had a whole bunch of records, and I got to have a root through them one day years ago, and they didn't listen to them anymore. I don't think they even had a record player, and there were a few that I picked out, and it was Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells, I remember, and it was something like the sleeve was in great condition, but the record was, a lot of it scratched and that sort of thing. Or was the other way around, I forget. And I thought, oh, but I've got that at home. I could take my record and put it in the Canadian sleeve. So, and I think I also did that with a Who album once too. I want to say it was like Who's Next or something. But usually I don't do that, but I have done it a few times. So yeah, we'll see if that ends up happening here or not. But all right, that's it. That's the last record that I have to show. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I always appreciate everybody who comments and subscribes. And until next time, bye-bye.